And this quote, I wrote it down and I always use it. He said, luck is a form of intelligence. It's being able to identify an opportunity and act upon it. You really have to put your blinders on and focus on the task at hand and not worry about what's happening around you. And that's exactly what I did with my team. And I said to them, listen, the real estate industry isn't going away. This is a temporary part of the cycle that we'll experience time and time again.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wisdom from the Helm, where we go beyond the typical highlight reels of real estate's most trusted women to reveal the secrets of their success, not just in business, but also in life. We're your hosts, Danielle Wilkie and Heather Frick, and today we are thrilled to welcome Sherry Chris. Sherry is not just a force in real estate. She's the woman with her own Pantone color, a boundary breaker who's reshaped what leadership looks like in this industry. She has more than 40 years of experience building brands like Better Homes and Gardens and ERA, and weathered every market storm. And now in her second act as a mentor and consultant, as an advisor to the NAR CEO and globetrotting wellness enthusiast, she's redefining success on her terms. And so today we're going to dive into how she balances legacy and this reinvention, why living lighter matters to her, and what leaders need most in today's ever-changing real estate landscape. Get ready for an episode of fun, insight, and a little Pantone Pink flair. I will say before we dive in that she is an advisor to us at the Helm, for which we are incredibly fortunate and grateful. And we think this one's going to be pretty darn good. So welcome, Sherry.
Thank you, ladies. That was a lovely introduction.
So great to have you here. Well, listen, I have to actually start with a question that I have been dying to ask you because we've never discussed this. And I've actually never even heard you talk about, although I'm sure you have. It's this Pantone color business. I think the only other person with a custom Pantone color is maybe Jay-Z.
Correct. That is correct.
So goodness, how did that level of personal branding come about? What's the story here?
Well, it's an interesting story. So early on in the development of BHGRE, we decided to, really take a deeper dive into the whole lifestyle piece of real estate. And as such, we contacted Pantone, the color people. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who don't know what Pantone is, it's really all of the colors that are used for everything. So we reached out to Pantone because what I wanted to do was create different color palettes for real estate, a contemporary palette, a traditional palette, an emerging palette, and use the end product as marketing vehicles for agents to use with consumers, et cetera. And so that partnership was a really interesting one because we created some video content and we worked very closely with them. And during that time, they found out that I really am drawn to the color pink. So the end result of this partnership was that they offered to create a custom color for me, which I first rejected. I said, I don't need, what am I going to do with that? And then my marketing consultant said, are you crazy? Like, I think they had something to do with all of this happening behind the scenes. And so I said, are you crazy? So you have to do it. So I did. And it was difficult because they have so many different colors of pink that we had to choose one that was not in use. And so that took a little bit of time, but the end result was I have my own Pantone color, which honestly, ladies, I never really utilized it. I mean, I could have created lipstick, nail polish, coffee mugs.
Yeah.
That other people do. I did stationery and, I use it on a website and that type of thing. But it really kind of fell by the wayside a bit until one day I got a call from the New York Post, and they were doing a story on Pantone and people that had their own Pantone colors. And so they wanted to hear my story. So I told them, and they wrote an article stating that, me and Jay-Z were the only two individuals. Of course, there are other Pantone colors that are registered, like, when you think about Hermes, orange, Tiffany, blue, etc. So that went into the lifestyle section of the New York Post. And just by chance, it ended up getting picked up the media wire and it went all over the world. And so I had like an aunt that, was in Dublin and saw it in the newspaper there. And my accountant in New Jersey saved the physical article. And when I went in to file, to meet him to file my taxes, he's like, I showed this to my wife. So it literally went viral. And I was kind of embarrassed actually, because it was pretty hokey. That's the story. So I still have it. And as you can see, I have artwork behind me here that is pink. I'm always looking for different ways to use it as an accent color. And so it was fun.
Well, I mean, it's like it's you. That's
It
what's
is.
so great about it, right? It's not like you chose brown. That's not
No,
Sherry. Like
no,
the color is your authentic essence. And so
it is.
it's like you come alive in other ways. And I just think that's so cool. So obviously, you did a lot of things before you got your own Pantone color. And so one of the things that I think is always interesting is how does someone end up in real estate? And your story is you were in banking and then you came to real estate. So curious about what was that transition for you? What inspired that change?
Well, it was very, very easy, Danielle. I bought a house.
Mm.
And as a young woman who had just started a career in as a very junior banker, let's face it, like, I could say I was a banker. We're not talking about investment banker or,
Mhm.
a bank manager. It was a very junior role. But I bought a house and I thought, wow, this didn't go exactly as well as it could have. I could do this better than the agent who represented both the seller and me. And so I got my real estate license. And, when you're in your early 20s, sometimes you do things on a whim. And I thought, I'm going to do this. And so people were shocked. And I actually started going to different brokers to, ask for a job after I successfully completed my licensing requirements. And I was getting turned down because they said, well, you're too young, you look too young, and nobody's going to want to work with you. Finally, a company did take me on. And actually, those brokers were right. It was hard at the beginning. And part of the difficulty was not because clients didn't want me, it was because I didn't have the discipline myself to actually work without accountability. And that was an early lesson where I learned that no matter who you are in the world and what your role is, we all need slash want to be held accountable. And so once I figured that part out, my real estate career took off. And actually, I ended up, of course, being a person that ultimately would hold others accountable. And I understood very early on the need for that and how that works in the overall food chain of real estate sales and leadership.
Wow. What you said about that you decided like I could do this better. That's like such an entrepreneurial thing to say. Like when people start businesses, they're like, I had this experience and I thought, man, I could do that better. And I love that that was your step into this whole thing. And then obviously the accountability, that is so huge, especially when you're running your own business. And that
Oh,
is really hard. I mean, even if you are amazing at what you do, to like wake up every day by yourself and to make yourself do the things that need to get done to move your business forward. Yeah, that's
it
hard.
is
And so that,
hard. It's
yeah.
hard. When a story that I always, remember from my early days in real estate was, of course, I'm young. It was in the middle of winter. I went out to the bar the night before with all my friends. I woke up in the morning. I promised these people that I would have an open house. I thought, oh, I don't want to have an open house. There was a snowstorm, but I forced myself to go there because I knew they expected me. I put an open house sign out. It blew over. One couple came and they bought the house. So, so is that like crazy luck or is it willpower or a combination of everything?
That's right.
It's stories like that that really keep you going and, make you want to get up the next morning and do it all over again.
Yeah, we make our own luck sometimes, just by showing up and being consistent. That's a great
Well,
example.
you know what? I was in a conference, and this was a Mike Ferry conference many, many years ago. And there was a speaker that spoke about, he was speaking about how you become an entrepreneur. And
Yeah.
this quote, I wrote it down and I always use it. He said, luck is a form of intelligence. It's being able to identify an opportunity and act upon it.
Wow.
So I'm like, wow, yes. And sometimes that's in your subconscious. It's not necessarily in the forefront.
Wow. I love that.
Mhm.
I'm going to write that down
Yes.
and use
And
it.
Sherry, did you just on that note, I mean, Danielle and I talk about this all the time, right? Of just sort of subconsciously programming your brain to look for something in the world that will serve you, right? And some of us call that vision. Did you have a vision consciously that you set forth about what you wanted to create around your life that maybe your brain was looking for all these opportunities and found them?
It's a really good question. And I think that I'm going to answer it by saying that I knew from an early age that I had the ability to look at things differently than maybe most people. That, if there were 10 people in a room and nine would say, we can't do that because we've never done it that way, I'd be the one person that would say, well, why don't we just try and
Oh.
see what happens? And so through my career, I always tried, and I would take something from one step to the next with an end vision in mind. But it's really important in business and in your life to break it off into chunks and, to be able to celebrate small accomplishments that allow you to move on to the next accomplishment.
Mm.
And that's how I've really lived my life. And there have been
Mm.
setbacks, crazy setbacks that are great learning experiences.
Great. Well, one of those I imagine might have been a learning experience that we wanted to ask you about was you took on quite a challenge in 2008 during the Great Recession of launching Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate, and would love to hear just a little bit about the challenges and the triumphs and everything in between. Like, what were some of the highs and lows that you'd experienced in that?
That was such a great learning experience and opportunity, and there's so much that I could talk about, but here's what I'll say is that, yes, it was always a goal of mine to belong to a large company like what was Realogy at that time is now Anywhere, because I really do thrive, even though I'm an entrepreneur brain at heart. I love the formality of the corporate environment and all of the accountability and everything that goes along with it. And so when I joined Anywhere in 2006 as COO of Coldwell Banker brand, that was a large responsibility, a global brand, and that was really my first foray into what I did for so many years at Anywhere. And when, I got called into the office and so they said, we're going to launch a sixth brand and we'd like you to consider being the CEO of it. And so I said, what is it? And they said, Better Homes and Gardens. And so I thought, oh, okay. So, I went home, I talked to my husband, I called a couple of my mentors and, they all
Um,
said, why wouldn't you do this? It's an incredible opportunity. But then I realized I said yes. We were on an accelerated time frame. I had like 9 months from start to finish to build a website, to put a team together, all of this. And I realized as I was going along that I had no clients, no agents, no listings, really absolutely nothing. And so I launched July 23rd, 2008. And we couldn't really sell it before that because we didn't have the right to use the name until that July date. But I managed to find ways to sell the brand without publicly stating what it was. And July
mm,
23rd, 2008, we had one broker that agreed to sign up. And that broker said, if I can be the first, it was important for him to be the first, then I'll sign a
mm,
10-year franchise agreement. So I was able to launch with one company. I still didn't have really, any listings, anything like that. And actually, what I did was I went to Zillow and I said, would you, and this speaks to the importance of building relationships, authentic ones. And I had a relationship with them. They were early on too. But I said, would you be willing to put all of your listings on my website? And
mm,
so and I said, framing, that's what we used to call it.
Mhm.
Like you click and it opens, but it's not really on your website. And so they said yes. And so I was the first company that actually framed Zillow's listings on my website. And so people were calling and saying, "How did you do this?" And of course, I had to get permission from anywhere to do it. And you just find a way to do things and find a way. So early on, I was finding ways.
Wow. I mean, what a great example of what we just talked about, right? Just this like you're spotting the opportunity when everyone else is looking one way, you're looking
Mm.
another. There's a recession
Well,
happening, and you're thinking, this is a great time. There's a lot of opportunity. Just so much
Heather,
curiosity.
the recession didn't happen until 3 months later.
Ah,
When on
perfect.
July 23rd, we had no idea that
Wow.
recession was coming. It was literally, like
October.
the financial crisis,
Yeah, the fall. That's right.
the fall of and, during that time, I had some good success selling franchises in the short term. But once, the fall of 2008 was upon us, there was a lengthy dry period, I would call it, where my team
Mm.
was worrying whether they were going to have a job or not. And, it was a very challenging time at that time, but obviously we got through it. Yeah.
How did you get through it? This is what I want to know because if you think about it, there's a lot of that happening right now. Like the market feels
Yes.
frozen for people. So, what did you learn during that time that might be helpful?
You really have to put your blinders on and focus
Mhm.
on the task at hand and not worry about what's happening around you. And that's exactly what I did with my team. And I said to them, listen, the real estate industry isn't going away. This is a temporary part of the cycle that we'll experience time and time again. And so we have to focus on the long term, and that's how we sold franchises, by going out to brokers and saying, listen, I know it's really bad right now, but when you come out of it, wouldn't it be great to have a new brand that is very different and unique and that can allow you to attract agents and grow significantly? That was the truth, and it actually worked. And companies started joining us, and that's how we grew during that time.
So, like, the equivalent would be what I heard you say was you built pipeline. You were like, listen, maybe everyone's not going to close right now, but I'm going to be out having all the conversations and lining everybody up. So, when it's time, when things unfreeze, when things move, I'm the one reaping the rewards of that. That's very applicable to an agent today.
Very much so, it is, and and a broker as well,
Yeah.
recruiting agents, and looking for growth opportunities and roll-in opportunities. There is so much out there. There's so much incredible opportunity right now for all of us in the real estate industry that, you just need to focus on the task at hand and build that pipeline. And I mean, I'll even mention this person's name, Kevin Levant, Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate Metro Brokers in Atlanta. And I called and tried to reach out to him for a year, and I never got a return call and nothing. And every time I reached out to him, I pretended that it was the first time. Because if you don't do that, then, like if you say, "Oh, it's Sherry Chris calling again," for the sixth month in a row, that I'd reach out, "Oh, this is Sherry Chris, and really love to connect with you," because I
Mhm.
figured someday it's going to catch, and it did. And he is a
Mhm.
long-term franchisee, one of the top in the country, with over 2,000 agents in Atlanta, Georgia, and beyond, and a close friend now, and an incredible colleague. And so once this podcast is out there, I'm gonna send him the link because he'll love the fact that he was mentioned.
I also just love that takeaway of approaching, even if you might think that this is the same challenge or the same conversation, just bringing a fresh perspective every single time with totally, total curiosity. Who knows what he's going to say, right? It's such a great lesson, especially now, right now.
Especially now. And so, it's important to concentrate on the short game and the long game at the same time. So you have to go back and
Mm.
forth. And as
Mhm.
brokers, teach your agents that build a long-term pipeline, manage your short-term pipeline. And that's,
Mhm.
it's how successful businesses do it of all sizes.
Heather, something else that I heard that I bet you did too when as Sherry was talking was when you're in this moment of like, oh my gosh, nothing's moving. This could be a total failure. You have two choices. You can choose to be paralyzed by fear and go down that spiral, or you can choose to acknowledge that fear and then say, no, we're just going to keep going. Did you hear that too, Heather, and what she had to say? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets to this idea of, I can face fear and let it be neither a motivator or a paralyzer. And it sounds like I'm going to welcome it and realize that this is scary and be able to be with it and take action at the same time and have a growth mindset at the same time, right? Which I think is a really powerful lesson that Danielle and I talk about all the time, and especially is relevant right now with anybody in business, real estate or not, right? Just like in business or in the world, in the United States right now.
Oh, and anyone. I mean, it's, if we look at the world today, it's scary. And, I hear from
Mhm.
people um, all over who, just say, I'm kind of scared right now about the
Mhm.
future in general. And my advice to them is what I just said is that, you have to use fear as a motivator to be a better person personally, professionally, to help more people to break through to the next phase of what you're doing. And that's how I look at it.
I wanted to ask you, Sherry, about what moves her. We are passionate about helping women in real estate. Know you are as well. Would love to hear about that initiative, the genesis of it, how it's been impacting women. Just tell us all about it.
Absolutely. It was the brainchild of Sue Yannicone, who is the CEO of most things at Anywhere today, and colleague, an ex-colleague, but a very close friend of mine. And she launched it at the beginning of COVID, not knowing that it was the beginning of COVID, when she was primarily focused on the Coldwell Banker brand and successfully launched it. And then, of course, COVID really put a temporary stop to everything. And when I was stepping down from my CEO role, and Sue asked me to stay on as an advisor and to do some work for her. And so I said to her, would you like me to help rebuild what moves her in a different way? And yes, she would. So we put a plan together. She approved it. I executed on it. And it was really to take what moves her to the next level. We launched a successful podcast. We created regional groups that could launch their own what moves her regionally. We did it within different brands. And so it grew over that 1.5 year time period. Then I handed it back and handed it off. And it's really Sue that, is the leader behind it and has the passion. I do too. And I want nothing more, of course, than for it to be successful. And that's really where I learned how to podcast was by trial and error. And at first it was very clunky, not sophisticated like this. And so, we learned over time how to bring, both men and women leaders onto the podcast, and it, remains very successful today. So I'm proud that I was able to help bring it forward and move it forward.
And it sounds like you personally are still very active in mentoring a lot of leaders. Curious, as you think about people who are taking advantage of mentoring and coaching, what is something that emerging leaders or women in real estate should be asking of their coaches or mentors right now, or might be asking or could use help with?
It's really a personal, each person has, a personal challenge or a personal goal that they want to achieve. I
Mm.
was just on the phone an hour ago with a real estate broker who's a friend and, would look at me as a mentor, who was telling me about a technology challenge. He reached out and said, "Can I talk to you?" And so we talked through what his challenge was, and I offered him two solutions that I could help facilitate for him. And he said, "Absolutely. Thank you very much." And that's how I do it, actually. So
Mm.
it really is very personal. And I don't have a formal mentoring program. I
Mhm.
have, a number of people that reach out. Some of them are once, some of them are on a regular basis. And I'm happy to help, very, very happy to help. Not being a professional coach, I have no training,
Mm.
but, really using my life experience to help others move forward. I have had coaches in the past, and most recently would have been about 5 years ago, where I just felt blocked. And, what I was doing and how I was going to be able to move forward. And so, one of the great things about Anywhere is that they do offer a coach, to various executives from time to time. And so I asked for a coach, got one, and that coach helped me so much.
Mm,
You know, what she did, it really wasn't a business problem that I was
mm,
having. It was a problem in my head where, she helped me see through where I could really expand the highest and best use of my skill set, both personally and professionally. And it was a breakthrough. And so I urge anyone at any time to seek, professional coaching and or mentoring, either informal or formal. It goes back to accountability too, is that if you are wanting to have a mentor, that you have to allow that mentor to hold you accountable to certain things. And so, not just a nice conversation.
Did you find that your coach in that experience, as she was sort of unlocking that problem set for you, was holding you accountable or was delivering that in some tough love, or like how was that experience for you?
It was like each session, she kept coming back to it and, the solution for me. And that was, the solution really ended up being giving back at a higher level. So I was very
Mm,
focused on, my team. I was focused on franchisees. I wasn't opening my mind for a period of time, whereas I normally would be. And part of that allowed me to really, in one instance, move forward with a charity that I had been working
mm,
with Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate New Story charity, and where, we successfully built a 91 home community in El Salvador. And
wow.
for them, raised the money through the brokers and agents and others and friends and built that community. And I remain
Wow.
involved with them today. They're a great, wonderful organization. And
Mm,
what my coach really showed me at that time was you know, to look at giving back at a different level and to look at giving
mhm,
back in general, because the more you give, the more that comes back to you. The more you give openly without asking for anything in return, the
mhm,
more things will come back to you. And that was a good breakthrough. So I will always be grateful for her. Others would have a different type of coach that, would help them develop their leadership skill set and do other things. I needed a coach for a different reason. I just didn't realize it at the time. And thank
mhm.
goodness she was, she realized it. So, but I guess that's what coaching is.
Thanks. That's great.
I was just listening to something this morning where somebody was saying that they really hate it when people say they're a self-made person, because the truth is none of us are just self-made. That we
Exactly.
that we, lean on lots of different people in our lives to find success. And I like that story about your coach because it's just a great example of that. You were clearly a brilliant leader. You clearly had found tremendous success in your career. You intellectually understand how to do things, but you needed that other person to engage with you, to reflect back
Mhm.
to you, to like help you reimagine things that you probably just wouldn't have been able to do on your own. And I think that is the power of coaching. It's not saying that you're less than or you're not capable or, it's that you just need help.
Exactly, exactly. And some people are not open to that or don't realize that that help will actually make a difference, but I'm telling you, it does.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of help, you're providing some help right now to NAR in the form of your role as a special advisor to the CEO of that organization. For people who haven't heard this yet, because not everybody has, what's your role there? What are you doing? What are your primary objectives?
Well, this is, an interesting scenario actually, and I'm glad you asked this questions. To back up, about almost a year ago, received a call from Nakia Wright, who is the CEO of NAR, brilliant, brilliant businesswoman. We call her a turnaround CEO, the type of person that NAR has never had before. And she was prompted by some brokers who said, you should talk to Sherry Chris. And so we started a dialogue and ended up where she invited me to be an advisor to her in the area of large brokers to start with and rebuilding relationships within the broker community. And historically, NAR has not spent time doing that. They spend time with their members because it's a trade organization that the revenue is provided by individual 1.5 million members. So they didn't break it out into the various groups. But really, when you think about it, it's the broker community that leads the agents. So, NAR should be concentrating on that. So I said yes. And I hit the ground running January 6th, and it's been full speed ahead since then. Uh, Literally been in front of over 11,000 brokers and agents, either virtually or in person. I
Mm.
have booked Nakia as a speaker at every major conference using my contacts and relationships because I said, the world needs to hear from you and everything that you're doing. And I'm now creating different groups of brokers that will, offer their opinions and advice to NAR as to how, from a brokerage perspective, things should look different. And there's been many, many meetings. So I'm fully engaged with that, all things broker. And so sometimes these meetings take place through a state or local association where they hold a broker summit, and I'll speak at the summit and meet with the brokers afterwards. It's a very complex web that we've created to reach out to the 85,000 broker owners across the country, 85,000, which I didn't know
Amazing.
that number until I joined as an advisor. So I'm having a lot of fun doing it. It's a big challenge, and it's a great opportunity to really make a difference, not just for, I shouldn't say just for, but not for a brand or a group of brands, but for the entire industry. And that's the way that I am approaching this and looking at it. And so that'll be my final gig, maybe.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. It's totally the next stage in what you figured out, that, like, thinking more broadly, giving back more generally, having an
Mhm.
impact. I think it just seems like such an obvious and brilliant next step for you, and I'm sure that they really value. I mean, your network, your experience, that's just really, really powerful. So now you're looking at the industry from 50,000 foot view, right? You're not looking at through your brand lens or your brokerage overall lens, company lens. You see the whole thing. You're talking to all these 85,000, one way or another, you're getting in touch with all these people. So I think you have a very unique opportunity to sort of see things for the industry that others don't. So you read the headlines. We all know what's going on. How do you foresee the real estate industry evolving? I mean, I want to say over the next decade, but let's be honest, like 3 to 5 years feels more of like the timeline these days. How do you see it evolving?
I believe that organized real estate is very, very important in the overall scheme of things as far as it relates to home ownership. And the structure that is currently in place is quite honestly criticized by many. There are over 1,000 directors. There are reasons for that. It's not somebody didn't wake up and say, oh, we need 1,000 directors for NAR, all based on local boards and associations, state associations, and different groups. Does that need to change? Yes, it does, but it needs to change over time. And so, first of all, we need to look at what should the future look like, and the future should look like the highest level of professionalism for agents and broker owners, and advocacy, having a national association advocate for home ownership across the country at the national level, the state level, the local level, training and education and certifications so that professionalism remains intact, technology help. The Second Century Ventures, the research arm, RPR, which is an incredible tool that agents and brokers use with the consumer, and then the research and data piece as well. We need data more than ever now. We need research. We need to know what's happened historically and what can we expect in the future. And those are what I call the four pillars of what NAR actually stands for today, but they don't get the word out as much as they should. And so that's part of what I'm doing is demonstrating that. And we cannot go to a Wild West scenario. I've traveled and managed brands all over the world. And if we look at different countries where there is no MLS, there's no organized real estate, it's total chaos. And right now we have a system that is really envied by the world. Everywhere that I've traveled, brokers and large company representatives said, "Oh, we wish we had it like the US." So we need to maintain that level of professionalism. Now, all around us, there's much going on with lawsuits and differences of opinions and all sorts of things. But the fact is that I will work as hard as I can to continue to talk about the importance of what we have today and how we can build on it and grow that level of professionalism across the country.
Mhm.
So I believe that if we look 3 to 5 years out, we will be a more professional industry because of that. And 10 years out, yes, technology is going to play an increasingly important role. I've been in this industry for 40 years. And when I started selling real estate as an agent, the most important part of the transactions, why I got into it, was the relationship between the agent and the consumer,
Mhm.
because it's their largest purchase. Today, the most important part of the relationship or the transaction is the relationship 40 years later. So is
Mhm.
that going to change? I don't think so. I mean,
Mhm.
even, I bought 6 years ago a property in Palm Beach and I know everything, or at least I thought I did. I needed an agent to help me in so many ways, and we need each other as human beings in this industry. In the mortgage end of it too, in every part of it. And
Mhm.
so that's how I see it.
Mm. I love that. I love that. To me, the theme there is that we're better together.
Totally.
And, despite, I think, a lot of actions to try and fracture and dismantle things, how could we let both be true? How can we let models evolve? And how can we continue to work together for the
Mhm.
greater good? So I like that balanced perspective. Okay. Quickly, I want to ask you. Many agents have never experienced a full market cycle. As you know, real estate agents increase when the times are good, and then you usually have a fall off, and then this cycle is real. You've seen multiple cycles. Many agents have only seen one, if not even one.
Yeah.
So what's the hard truth about navigating this turbulent market that you think today's realtors need to hear?
That it's really what we talked about before, Danielle, and that is that, concentrate on your short-term game and your long-term game. Build your pipeline, differentiate yourself from your competitors in a professional way, create your own value proposition, entice both buyers and sellers by not who you are and how many awards you've won, but what you're going to do for them and what you have done for others. Because that's what the consumer is looking for. They're not looking for, I'm the top agent with 15 top agent awards. They're looking for, what are you going to do for me to
Right.
help me successfully navigate this? And that's what agents need to do. And yes, the numbers go up and the numbers go down, not by a lot, but they do. The numbers haven't really gone down that much. I'm talking about number of realtors right now. And there still is business out there, not as much as there was. Make sure that you are one of the agents that is going to successfully sell more homes than your competitors.
Yep.
And what are you going to do? What steps are you going to take to make sure that that happens? And there are many. The other thing that I will say, and I get asked this question a lot, is that small broker versus large broker versus public company. And there's room for everyone in this marketplace. Not every agent wants to work for a large company.
Yep.
And, if you're a small broker in a smaller community, make sure that your value prop outshines everyone else. We're in sales, sell,
Yep.
right? We're
Yep.
all in sales. And
Mhm.
that's the beauty of real estate, is that there really is enough business for all of us that work hard at it.
Yep. I love that. There's enough
Mhm.
for everyone. Great abundance mindset.
Yes.
And I think I love what you said earlier about relationships. If this is going to persist in being about relationships, which I might even argue relationships will become more important in the age of AI than they have been ever before, that your unique essence and DNA as a seller, as a business leader, as a real estate agent becomes even more important to get out into the world because that's how you will build that relationship, right?
Exactly.
Whether that's with a huge public company or a tiny independent brokerage, right?
Exactly. Differentiate yourself. It doesn't matter what size of company you're with. What matters is it a good cultural fit as an agent? Are you going to get the support you need from your broker owner? Does your company have a good reputation in the community? And does the company have the tools that you need to be as successful as you can? And all sizes of companies offer all of that. So
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
really is completely up to the individual. And I've worked for small companies and large companies. Our business is here to stay, no
Mm.
question.
Well, in the context of that, you're working for small companies and large companies and now for yourself. Tell us a little bit about your leadership style and how has that evolved over the years?
Well, of course, when I was young and an agent and staying out too late and not holding myself accountable, that wasn't a very strong leadership style personally. But over the years, it has evolved. And what I found for me, and there are different there's like an autocratic leadership style, there's an inclusive leadership style. I'm the type of leader that surrounds myself with people who do certain things better than me, and I empower them to be successful.
Mm.
And that is, in my opinion, the best way to build a brand, to build a company, and to wake up every morning and be happy and excited about what you do. That, it's not a job, that it's a big part of your life. And I have so many examples of that, how that has worked, and people that I've worked with, colleagues that have gone on to do amazing things partially because they were empowered to believe in themselves and be the best and excel. And that allowed them to excel in many different ways. And if I was starting all over again today, I would do it exactly the same way.
Love that. You've talked a lot about, in recent interviews, your travel and wellness and this idea of living lighter. Can you just explain to us what you mean by that and how is that present for you now that you've sort of stepped out of full-time operator mode?
It's I think everyone, and I have the beauty right now to be able to travel and spend more time on me, which it seems like I don't have that much time right now to do that. But, you reach a point in your life where you look at yourself and say, okay, I don't know, there are only so many years left. I want to make sure that I make the absolute best out of those years for me, for my family, for my friends. So for me, that speaks to being healthy. And I have been on, a journey over the past 3 years of health and wellness and ensuring that, everything that goes into my mouth is non processed, healthy, clean, mostly raw. It's vegetables I'm talking about. And so that's made a huge difference. And to take the time to exercise effectively for you and who you are, to take time to meditate and reflect on, who you are as a person, what you want to do in the future, and to take time for yourself and travel, not as a tourist, but I travel as immersing myself in the country that I'm in, living like a local and learning from that. And every country I've visited, I've been in over 30 countries in my life. It's just great to be able to take something back that's a best practice and use it in your business and personal life and build relationships too. So that is me today. And I would help anyone achieve what I'm on the road to achieving. You never fully achieve it.
What on that journey, this is fascinating. Give us a sense for the before and after, right? Like, what is the impact of all of this focus and energy? And it feels like what probably is a big shift from your previous life. Like, what has that done for you?
Well, in many things. So if I look back at launching a brand, I never took enough vacation, was living in a two-country marriage. I'm Canadian. I was working in the US and my husband was an attorney. Sadly, he passed away almost 7 years
Mm.
ago. So, and that started it basically, where you start thinking about, okay, what is the rest of my life going to look like? And we had a fantastic marriage that we were true partners, and I don't regret a day of it. And, it wasn't meant to be for him to still be here. And so with
Mm.
that, that's what started it. But it took a few years to really kick it off, and COVID happened in between. And I'm going to tell you that was good and bad for me personally. What was good about it is that it was really, the year and a half after my husband passed away, that I had to fully immerse myself into the fact that I was CEO of two brands. One of them was in 45 countries, and nobody could see each other. And so how are we going to bring these people together to embrace them, because some of them were scared. I was scared. And so I fully immersed myself in that. And I didn't really spend enough time on myself during the COVID period of time. It was all in everyone else. And then you wake up and realize, wow, I'm living by myself in Toronto, where I am today. Um, and nothing is open, and I cannot see anybody. And that was the time that a couple of friends reached out, and they said, and they were in Palm Beach. So they said, you have to come, you're not okay. So we know that. So you have to
Mm.
come to Palm Beach. And so I did, and I bought a property there. And that helped me because, I always make a joke like COVID didn't happen in the state of Florida, as you may or may not remember. Everything was, I went from one extreme to the other, but that really started me. So sometimes it takes like an event that you don't expect and you react to. None of us are perfect. That jars you. And now, I live in Palm Beach and Toronto, and I'm going to make sure that I give back to the industry as much as I can, that I continue to work hard because I choose to, but I also enjoy my life to the fullest with a very eclectic group of friends.
Can I just fast forward to that? That sounds amazing.
Well, that's your advice for
Mm.
That sounds so good. All right, we have just two more quick questions. The first is, everyone who is curious and loves to grow loves a good book. What has had the most impact from a book perspective on your professional life? Like, what's your favorite book?
This is an old book that is still relevant today, and it's called Good to Great. Do you know it?
Yes.
Jim Collins. And it was really before technology. It was before anything. It was a solid business book, Good to Great. And so, I've read it several times because I go back to it. So here's the premise of the book. For those who haven't read it, I urge you to. And just forget about the fact that it doesn't talk about AI. It doesn't talk about anything like that. Here's what it talks about. It talks about finding the right people. And this is like from a business perspective, finding the right people to work with. Number one. Number two is it teaches you to develop a clear vision and stay with that vision. Number three is that it tells you to build a culture of discipline and make sure that you adhere to that, and empowerment. And that speaks to empowering, bringing the right people in and empowering them. And the fourth premise of the book, and it's all the stuff that we've talked about. Concentrate on short-term goals and long-term plans at the same time. Short-term, long-term. And that's really the book. And that book helped me so much, and it continues to help me today.
Yeah, you can just see that as like the roadmap or the Bible for the way you just described how you lead and teams and all of
Exactly.
that. It's amazing. We'll make sure that we have a link to that in the show notes so everyone can have a
Good,
taste of
good.
that. That's
It's,
great. All right, last question for you before we let you go. What advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
you're throwing me for a loop here now.
Disciplined, out partying, but I got to get up and show the
Yeah.
house self. What would you say to her?
I would say to her, enjoy your youth, but look to the future and plan ahead. Who do you want to
Mm.
be as an adult? And what do you want to accomplish in your life? What's important to you? And make a plan to do that. And your plans change. My plan changed. It was always there, generally speaking, but it changed because I looked for opportunities. And I guess the most important piece of advice I would give to that young woman is always look for opportunities, and decide whether those opportunities are something that you want to act upon. And it's that quote that I shared with you earlier.
It's like have a plan, but be open to the opportunities that come your way.
Exactly. And, it's okay to pivot. I don't like that word because that's overused, but
Mm-mm.
sometimes a roadblock, suddenly comes up.
Yes.
And then you think, now what? You have to find a way around that roadblock. And we could talk for another half hour on ways to, get around those roadblocks, but there's always a way,
Mm.
always.
Well, we might have to have you back sometime and talk about how to get past all these roadblocks,
Oh,
Sherry, because
yes.
we clearly have more to discuss. But thank you. Thanks for
Thank
sharing
you,
your time with us
Heather.
today.
No, thank you so much. I admire and respect both of you so much and what
Well,
you're building. And it's my pleasure to be on that journey with you as well.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Sherry.
Sherry. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this conversation valuable, subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform, and please consider giving us a rating or leaving us a review, as it helps others find us. You can find all past episodes or learn more at the-helm.com.